Hey, I'm Nick, and in this video I'm hoping to help you to understand a little bit more about design thinking. Before I get into it, I just wanted to let you to get to know me a little bit better. I'm a design researcher working for a product design and innovation consultancy based within the UK, and I work across a variety of different sectors and brands, from products found on supermarket shelves to medical devices and consumer products. I help organisations deep dive into research and insights about their products and users, from large organisations all the way down to smaller startups. I help them use a wide range of quantitative and qualitative research methods to help them unlock insights, get a deeper understanding of their users, and ultimately improve the products they design and develop. Before becoming a design researcher, I trained as an industrial designer, so design thinking has always naturally been part of the way I understand and solve problems. Since then, I have gained my PhD in Design and Innovation Management, really understanding the value that good research and insights can bring a project. Now, as a professional design researcher, design thinking is a tool that I can use with my clients to really help them understand their users and consumers of their products and services in a creative way, grounded in the user's perspective. Design thinking is fundamentally at the heart of every design practitioner in the way they approach problem solving and the solutions they develop. But, as a tool, what design thinking can offer designers, or non-designers alike, is a means to take advantage and utilise a design-based approach to the research, design and innovation of products, services and systems, putting the users at the heart of the process. What I'm hoping to try and help you understand in this session is to really get to grips with the fundamentals of what design thinking really is, and help you understand the vast amounts of information on the process available to you online. By following the techniques I'm going to share with you today, you can begin to plan on how you can build and implement your ideas quickly. We'll go over the fundamentals of where design thinking originated from, what design thinking is, and why it's suddenly become more popular, and the steps and processes associated with design thinking, so you can go away and put it into practice yourself. However, design thinking is not perfect. What I will also cover and help you understand and acknowledge are some of the pitfalls of design thinking, what to be cautious of and look out for when thinking of using the process for yourself. So, what is design thinking? The way we design and develop products, services and systems is becoming ever more fast-paced and demanding, so more traditional stage approaches to the product development process have just become outdated because of the time, effort and resources often needed to get a project off the ground or even be considered for investment. Design thinking can offer individuals and organisations a way to help speed up the early phases of research, ideation and testing before committing to more formal and costly product development, or gaining the funding from a sponsor or investor. The term design thinking has been a popular buzzword across organisations and disciplines for many years now, along with all sorts of other buzzwords like being agile, lean, or sprinting, as a means to try and speed up the product development process and make it more time and cost efficient. This inevitably has meant that nearly every organisation globally now has some form of design thinking process, making it important now more than ever to really understand what design thinking is, if you're going to work in any of the areas that have anything to do with development of products, services, or being involved in an area of innovation within any sector or industry. People will inevitably talk about or use design thinking methods or similar. So, what is design thinking? Simply, at a high level, we can begin to understand design thinking as a philosophy, along with a set of tools as a means to solve problems more creatively. When an individual or project team is trying to solve a problem, a lot of the time a complex problem, you can use design thinking as a means to navigate your way to that solution. Although there are many different processes and approaches that can be followed to solve a problem, design thinking at its core uses a human-centered focus. It's really about understanding who you are designing for, what their needs are, and ultimately helping you innovate around and solve problems for them. Design thinking was initially popularised by David Kelly and Tim Brown from IDEO and Roger Martin from the Rotterdam School. The philosophy of design thinking takes and applies tools from the world and toolkit of design and really shifts the focus of problem solving to a human-centric lens and a real focus to human behaviour. But it also allows you to quickly prototype and test iteratively to see what will really generate user and business benefits before any major or significant time and capital is spent developing a solution further. It's about empathizing with who you are designing for, what their needs are really, and using that to innovate, ideate, and eventually help you solve that problem or problems. It packages a designer's way of working into a more prescribed process for non-designers to access in the aid of creative problem solving in a more step-by-step approach. Design thinking tries to change the perspective of individuals and get them to move away from trying to be too technologically driven or lead by certain organizational capabilities. It looks to try and reject this, but facilitate being more solution agnostic and really listen to the needs and requirements of users. It puts the human at the center of the process and uses the human perspective to innovate, ideate through discovering and solving problems instead of just putting a technology or product into the marketplace just because you have it available to you. So just to make it clear, it's a human-focused process, and this should always be remembered. However, design thinking is not just simply about polling or asking questions to users to determine whether they prefer idea 1 over idea 2. It's about asking and posing questions and inquiring about individuals themselves, their lives, observing their actions and really understanding their lived behaviours in the context of the problem that you are trying to identify and solve. The design thinking philosophy offers a 5-step process that you might have already heard of as a general framework to follow when undertaking design thinking. This includes empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. These steps are only here to help guide you to better understand the methodology of human-centered design. From here, you'll be able to gain deep insights to reveal new or maybe even unexpected ways of seeing how to approach and solve problems. However, it's important to understand that design thinking is not a prescribed approach. The tasks and exercises that can sit within it are not ultimately defined. These steps can be adapted to suit time, budget, and type of project you're working on, and inevitably the process will be different every single time that you use the approach in different domains with different users and stakeholders. There are no rules to tell you to do certain exercises or methods in each phase. This needs to be determined for each application of the design thinking approach. It's not a strict recipe, it's something to be adapted and changed to fit the needs of the certain project at hand. As I mentioned earlier, the design thinking process can be used as a rapid innovation process and can be undertaken in as little as a week, or it can take as long as you need to really understand and validate potential solutions. Now that we have an understanding of what the 5 steps of design thinking are, we can now begin to deep dive into each one of these to unpick what really happens in each step. As I mentioned before, the process is flexible, and every organisation, every designer, every design thinker is at liberty to adapt the approach to the methods and execution of design thinking. But, as a general framework, these 5 steps will often stay in the same way to guide the process. The first step, empathise. Ultimately, this step is really about trying to understand and immerse yourself into the lives and contexts of the people you're developing solutions for. This stage is about gathering the information you need about those people, these potential users, so it's really important at this stage to ask yourself, who am I designing for? What do these people do? What are their problem or problems? Lots of different tools can be used at this stage to gain insights. Some of these typical tools might be user interviews, observations, generating personas, an online survey, or just being a general fly on the wall whilst being out and about to really dig down and understand more about the people you are looking to develop solutions for, and gain a comprehensive understanding about them. At this point, it's really about empathizing on a much deeper level with the people you're designing for. This will vastly range depending on the type of project you're working on and the type of people you're developing solutions for, so tailor methods that you think will help to access the right people. If it's a specific type of user, you might only be able to do one-to-one interviews. A great way to start this step can be just doing some simple Google searching or watching some YouTube videos. This can be a great way to get a foundation of knowledge to prepare yourself with a fundamental understanding and core questions before going and talking to real people. When talking to people, it should simply go beyond just talking to your friends, family, and people you generally feel comfortable talking to. Find the actual people you want to design for, the real users you intend to solve problems for. If it helps, try and write a list of key criteria or characteristics of people you want to talk to. This can include their age, profession, geographical location. Use this to make sure you're talking to the right people, not just people for the sake of people. It needs to be the ones that you intend to design solutions for. I know this can be quite a daunting task. It's a bit scary, especially if you've never done it before. Trust me, I've been there. Make sure you go in prepared with a list of key questions or areas of conversation from some of the initial research you have done beforehand, but make sure you find appropriate and accessible ways to contact people, and make sure to be respectful. They have given up their time to talk to you. Take particular care if you're talking to minors, older generations, or individuals with disabilities or illnesses. You might need to get some ethical clearance or support getting correct documentation to make sure you aren't breaking any rules when talking to these people. And try to avoid using personal details and identifiables where possible. Keep it general, anonymized, wherever possible. The next step, define. Taking everything gathered and learnt in the empathize stage, where you have deep dived into these potential users and have maybe come up with some initial conclusions about them, identified some of their problems and needs based on the research through direct and indirect interactions, it's now time to use these insights to ask what. What are their needs? What are their problems? What are their challenges? What are the key insights you can take away from all of that research? The define step is more about breaking down what you've learned and coming to more defined conclusions based on everything that you've learned through those interviews, observations, and interactions with users. Really try and narrow down what is useful and valuable to you, and most importantly, what is actionable. It's now time to turn these observations, problems, and needs into key insight clusters and written, defined statements. A great way to do this is through a method called affinity mapping, something that I often like to use to visually break down the data I've collected. Write all of your key insights onto post-it notes and begin to cluster them into relevant ones, together with overarching themes. From here, you want to try and capture the insights into maybe a select few words or phrases. Something that unites all of that learning together and turning a page of notes into some more defined insights and statements. Other methods you could use could include some more persona generation to really bring these insights to life. If you're more of a methodical thinker, spreadsheets and brainstorm maps can be other useful tools too to help unite all of that knowledge together. Use methods that you feel comfortable using that help you understand and draw conclusions from all of this data. Step 3. Ideate. Now the fun and creative bit can begin. Taking everything you have learned and refined in the previous empathize and define steps of the process, this will all feed into and inform your idea generation and development. This step of the process is all about coming up with ideas for potential solutions. You will now look to generate ideas that are all informed based on all of your key insights that you have discovered and identified. Don't be worried if you can't sketch or draw. Ideating isn't about drawing pretty pictures or trying to create the perfect design for your idea. Some of the best ideas will just simply be a set of words or a quick scribble. Don't get hung up on trying to draw it perfectly. What is most important about this step is making sure you document the ideas and communicating them in one way or another, whether that be in sketch or with a few words. This step can be really daunting for a lot of people, but at this point you need to take the attitude that no idea is a bad idea. Some of your first ideas might suck. You might come up with a bunch of great ideas straight away and then really struggle to keep coming up with them. It is really important to take a divergent approach to your ideas at this point. Capture everything you can possibly think of and exhaust everything, but make sure that you address your insights and link them back to the problems that you have researched and identified in the earlier steps. At this point, it can be really tempting to bias yourself and go back and try to implement some cool technology you've found, or just an idea that you think is really cool without grounding it within any of the evidence or research. If you find yourself doing this, make sure you try and ask yourself, is this really aligned with my research and insights? Or is this just an idea because I like it? Really challenge yourself to make sure you avoid this and stay true to the human-centric approach to the process. Don't be afraid to get other people involved, recruit some people, and if it's a project with multiple people, get them involved and embed them in your research and insights. Sometimes it is useful just to get a fresh set of eyes on the problems, an alternative perspective to your own. These people might be from different backgrounds and have different expertise that might offer some new ways of thinking. Finally, make sure you document all of your ideas, notes and sketches. Sometimes I find filming or recording an ideation session can be really helpful to capture conversations and ideas that might not be documented straight away, and try and get these all down on paper and post-it notes if possible, to review and critique later when you try and select ideas to take forward. Step 4. Prototype. Now that you have all of these great and wonderful ideas, it's time to select the best ones to take forward to prototype. Out of all the ideas you've generated, try and identify which ones answer the problems and insights identified in earlier steps, and which might be actionable and feasible to take forward to build and test with users. At this point again, it can be great to get other people involved who can offer a different expertise or perspective to help you make decisions, but remember the idea does not have to be perfect. It just needs to be at a stage where the main functions can be prototyped and tested with users. Now, when we say prototypes, that does not mean fully finished, expensive prototypes. This stage is all about creating basic bricks that can be tested with real users and demonstrate the core functions of your idea. An example of this could be an app. Now, you're not going to go away and code an entire app to run on someone's phone. That would be a total waste of time and be very expensive. Do not spend lots of time and money creating these. These just need to get a feel for what the idea is and see if it's worth taking forward and exploring in maybe more high fidelity formats where you can spend a little bit more time and money creating prototypes. If you spend lots of money and time and find your users don't like the idea, this is just a waste of your time and a waste of resources. Step 5. Test. Now you have your prototypes ready, it's time to test them with real users. Now these prototypes should be based on the ideas you generated earlier and backed up by the insights and products you identified in the earlier stages. See how all these stages are now linking together. Now, what is important at this stage is to do like you did at the beginning with the empathize stage and interact with real users, the people who will be using and interacting with the products in real life. This testing phase is all about getting feedback, good or bad. You can use a range of different methods to draw out these insights. This could involve giving it tasks and some instructions to complete, asking a specific question about certain features, a simple survey, or just observing people using and interacting with your prototypes. What is important at this stage is to gauge and collect your users' body language, opinions, thoughts and feelings. This might be through some direct things they've said, or maybe some more subconscious actions like incorrectly using a feature or maybe not using it as intended. Test with a few different people and try and identify any key responses or issues, or anything that was repeated across users. Now, you think we might be over, but design thinking is iterative. From the learnings developed from your testing, these will inform another define phase, develop ideas, amend prototypes, and test again. This will help you to improve your ideas based on their feedback and craft better, more refined solutions through human-centric insights, interactions, and testing. So, what's next? As we mentioned earlier, design thinking is a research and innovation process that offers a human-centric approach to the research and design of products and services for real human problems. Just because they might solve a problem, that does not mean they're commercially viable in their current state. When you think you have a winning idea, you now need to identify the people, resources, and capabilities that you need to turn that idea into something to produce, distribute, and possibly sell. Design thinking provides you with the mindset to be able to identify human-centered solutions for real problems. It does not mean they're automatically commercially viable. Work with the people that are knowledgeable in bringing ideas to life and make those ideas a reality. Also, remember, just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it can be made. Be realistic. Is it going to end up costing the user 10 times the price of a competitor? Are you going to lose money doing it? Is that technology even feasible? Is it even safe to use? Is it even legal? Make sure you have this in the back of your mind when ideating to help bound your ideas a little bit. Now, for a word of warning, Although the 5 steps of design thinking provide reasonable steps for designers and non-designers alike to engage and collaborate in more human-centric approaches to innovation, there are some additional elements that I think you should take into consideration when engaging with the design thinking process. Firstly, idea and design criticism. Although I said no idea is a bad idea, not all ideas are good ideas. As a designer working through my days in the design school, I quickly understood the value of design criticism and feedback from my peers and colleagues. Critical evaluation of ideas is fundamentally missing from the design thinking process. Whilst ideating, always take a critical lens with your ideas. Of course, document everything you come up with, but be honest with yourself and get others to be honest with you. Sometimes the best thing is to go back to the drawing board and start again, instead of convincing yourself that you have a good idea. Ask for feedback, builds, and comments from your colleagues, designers or non-designers. Evaluate the idea yourself and make sure you are answering the insights and problems that you have gained. Secondly, reducing design to post-it notes. I've got a bit of a problem with this. It can be a bit of a stereotype that design thinking is all about post-it notes. There are many different tools that you can use to ideate beyond this versatile and accessible tool. Think outside the box and maybe pick methods that are best for you, and you'll be able to ideate with effectively. Do not restrict yourself to a single medium. It could be large sheets of paper, it could be little models. It doesn't have to be post-it notes on a wall like a lot of people think it does. Don't think you have to use them just because you see all the people on the internet doing it and it looks productive. Design can be really messy, and that's okay. Thirdly, are you just using design thinking as a buzzword? Before considering using design thinking as a process, ask yourself, do I really need to use this? Is the solution already really obvious? Do you need to go through this process? Is it a complex problem? Am I using design thinking for the sake of just saying that I've used it? Like I said, design thinking should be used when you're trying to solve more complex problems that you or your team are stuck on ideally. Design thinking, along with other methods such as design sprints, agile thinking, provide a means for individuals to unstick themselves. So really ask yourself, are my intentions for using design thinking as a process really necessary? So hopefully in this session you have realised that design thinking can be a great tool in your toolkit when innovating and solving problems, when it's used appropriately. It's important to remember that these 5 steps of the process are a set of guidelines for you to think in a more human-centred way, and it's ultimately up to you to pick and choose the methods you need to address the problem context and answer questions that you're asking within this general framework. It's also important to remember that design thinking is iterative. Don't just take the 5 steps as a singular linear process. Utilise every step and go back and readdress steps when you need to critique, iterate, and improve the designs and solution outcomes to your problems. There are plenty more resources out there to help you get to grips with the process, but hopefully what I've presented you here today will help you understand the fundamentals of design thinking to help you get started.